Okay, so today I'm going to cover three topics over the next 15 minutes or so, and we should have plenty of time for questions because you may have some very particular pieces that you'd be interested in. So I'm going to cover very quickly what is Researchfish. I think most people here should know, but just a little bit. Then what information is collected? And then finally, how can the information be reported more easily in Researchfish? So there may be things that you aren't doing yet that could help out with that reporting. So what is Researchfish? Researchfish is an online platform designed to make it easier for researchers to report the outputs, outcomes, and impacts of their funded research. How it works is it's a semi-structured repeated survey measure. So it has some very high level structure and classification, and then it has some open-ended elements to allow for a richer understanding of the impact. It's a repeated survey measure because previously most of the impact would have been understood through a final grant report, which was at a single point in time. And so by doing it repeatedly and continuing over time, it creates the possibility to capture longer term impacts. And when funders were originally thinking about what sorts of things they should do that sort of gave rise to the birth of Researchfish, there was a strong push towards encouraging evaluation more broadly, and in particular beyond bibliometrics. So bibliometrics are traditionally very easy or easier to count and to manage. That risked privileging particular types of research. And so there was a desire to try and broaden the scope of things that could be considered. And this structured element is also really important because in an open-ended text format, it's very easy to lose the data. And so a lot of the earlier, the 10 hints there all really spoke to that sort of organization. So in terms of what things exactly are captured in Researchfish, so there are 16 high-level output types. And so here you can see the quite traditional publications and intellectual property and spin-out companies, but also it contains particular operationalizations of more amorphous things, such as influence on policy or collaboration. And so each of these has their own definition in Researchfish, and it may be slightly different from your definition, but you should also be able to find some very particularized guidance about this means this, tell us about this kind of thing, don't tell us about those kinds of things, as well as a map sort of to start going the next level down. So for example, in the intellectual property section, that includes patents, but it also includes trademarks and other things like that. So there's these different layers to the types of information that are reported. So moving from an open-ended text to a more semi-structured data aimed at capturing all of these different things, there was a big concern about the quality of the data that would be reported and the amount of time it would take people to report. And so there was a big push, and there still is, to understand how much time it takes and to try and improve the quality in that time. And so to this end, Researchfish is really focused around different types of external unique identifiers and enable various types of interoperability between systems. So Researchfish has different types of interoperability that run across those sections, and I'll talk a bit more about those in a minute. But the types of interoperability are direct harvesting. So we talk about that when we're able to go into an external system and we're able to add whole outputs or attributions into Researchfish. So we're able to find a publication, we're able to find that a publication is linked to this particular grant or this particular project. We're able to pull that in and the researcher doesn't have to do anything at all. We also enable research organizations to upload information that they hold in their local system. So you may need to do some internal reporting at your institution.
Hello. Sorry, I'll turn. Hello, yes. Is that Dr. Thomas?
Sorry, I think someone
Hi, thank you very much.
not on mute. So a research organization upload from their EuroCRIS systems if you may need to report there. We also enable metadata enhancement. So this enables us to go into different systems and add additional output information. So for example, open access status to avoid having to ask anybody any types of questions, we may just go and find alternate ways to be able to enhance the metadata of the outputs that are reported. And then finally, we have different search integrations to help people find and identify their outputs, and again, minimize the sorts of data that they need to report. So it's keeping it easy in making the quality of the data that gets reported as clean as possible. So across those 16 different output types, all of the ones here that are highlighted in green have some form of interoperability embedded into them. And so that means we can, to varying degrees, automate or make easy the reporting of these particular types of outputs, which may or may not be more than you would think, but often people are surprised by how much is there. And so really the focus of this talk is to look at how you can get some of the things that you are producing into those green areas to make that easier for you. So how to optimize the reporting of data in Researchfish? Well, the first one I would say would be Orchid. So for people that are involved, you can connect your Orchid, if everybody here knows that, to their Researchfish accounts. And so in Orchid, you can hold a record of your individual publications and other types of works. You may have them pushed from different systems. You may have them because you would like to keep track of it. You may publish with them as well. If you do that, then publications with unique identifiers, so Crossref DOIs or PubMed IDs, can be pulled from Orchid into Researchfish or pushed from Researchfish into Orchid. So this enables you, if you already have the information structured, to pull it and to not have to worry about reporting it again. And you can even give permission to Researchfish as part of that connection to automatically pull new publications from Orchid. So within about 4 minutes of a new record appearing in Orchid, it would appear in your Researchfish portfolio. And whenever you use Researchfish, you should be able to associate your Orchid, and it's at the top of every single page. And when you have, you'll see your Orchid ID there as well. So it's a fairly simple step to do, but Orchid should help us sort of come to a much better understanding about individual researchers over time. Even on this talk, I can see 2 people whose names are identical to colleagues and previous colleagues of mine, and I suspect that they are not the same people. So Orchid helps us uniquely identify these and move information around. In addition to the pull from Orchid, really the biggest thing is the acknowledgement of funding information. So most organizations require an acknowledgement statement to be introduced with published works, particularly publications. And it should take the form of something like this. So this work was supported by the Wellcome Trust, and then grant numbers 1, 2, and the next funder grant number, and the next funder grant number. And what this does is it enables the possibility that this information can be automatically harvested. And in fact, we do a lot of pulling from this. So if this is written in a Word document and is locally available, that's not really something that's going to be capable of being harvested. But if, for example, in a publication this is included, then it's possible that we may be able to go into the publisher's record directly, so from Crossref or other sources like PubMed or Web of Science, and be able to pull that information out and populate that in Researchfish. So the easiest thing there is if that is included, then you shouldn't have to report anything at all, and it should automatically go through. Publications are the most common output type, but they're not the only one. And in fact, what we can see beyond publications which may be of interest to this group, are data sets and software in particular. So we've already heard mention of GitHub. And so software that is put in GitHub can be automatically pulled into Researchfish via a harvesting process if it has the right information. The types of data sets that you may be producing, again, those can also automatically end up in Researchfish without you having to do anything. And so we harvest these objects through use of DataCite and DataCite DOIs. You may already be familiar, but DataCite DOIs can be created through many different types of repositories. So very common ones that everybody uses or many people use would be Figshare and Zenodo. GitHub also enables the creation of DOIs for objects, their software or data, through a Zenodo integration that they have. And so you can mint a DOI and you can include the funder acknowledgement as part of that, which enables the automatic harvesting. And in particular in the UK, most university repositories, and I've just picked the University of Southampton here, but actually most universities in the UK, their repositories enable the creation of DataCite DOIs as well. And so making sure that the funding acknowledgement information appears in those means that Researchfish can go and automatically pull information from those repositories, and again, saving people the time of having to report something. If you're already reporting it in the first instance, just adding that little bit of extra metadata should mean that you don't have to report it in Researchfish. Always make sure to acknowledge the funder and the grant reference, and then all of these things can happen automatically. Then in terms of the next steps, so if you have acknowledged, if you have used Orchid, there'll still be other things that you need to report in Researchfish, where either they don't have a unique identifier or they're a type that isn't harvestable. Researchfish has a number of different search interfaces. Some of these are provided by external organizations such as Crossref, but others we build and maintain ourselves in order to try and help people report and identify things. So one example here is the Further Funding database, which contains about 2 million funded grants. So hopefully you can find and identify particular pieces of funding that you've received, and you can report that into Researchfish just by searching and selecting. Manual entry is always available across all of these different output types, but searching and selecting should always be quicker, and it will produce linked and validated and refreshable data. So often we see people report outputs that they could have selected through searching, and obviously that does take a little bit longer. In addition to that, you can also make use in Researchfish of the functionality around research teams and delegates. So a lot of what was just said relates to how you can get multiple people working on the same project. And in Researchfish, there are a couple of different roles that people can play to report on a common project. The first is the research team functionality. So there is a person responsible, the award holder for each award in Researchfish, and that person can create a research team. And that gives the people in the team the ability to view the project, to be able to view the outputs, to be able to report on the outputs, and to be able to reuse the information in other projects or share information that they've already got in there. And that award holder can make anyone a team member. So it could be a co-investigator, a collaborator, a PhD student. And this enables all of those people to be able to start to build up their own set of data in Researchfish as well, because they may have multiple projects. So that's one way that people can be set up to help the reporting and spread the load. The other is the delegate function. So individual people can set up a delegate. And so a delegate is a person who typically isn't a researcher, so they're not going to have a portfolio of things themselves. So they might be an administrative assistant or somebody who's working at the departmental level. And essentially, you can give them permission to access your account, and they can act as you in most respects. And so we can track where they're doing things that it's not you. And they can do pretty much everything that a researcher can do, except give others access to their account. So you can't have a daisy chain of people giving access. So the person who owns the account is the one who always retains control. And they can't sign off a final report and say that something is accurate and complete at this point in time. So that's the teams and delegates function. So I think only a minute or two late for the talk part. And so hopefully that was a useful, quick canter through some of the things that are available in Researchfish. And so with that, do you have any questions?